Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another Top Cut breakdown. Today we're going to go over the Carta Magica online event that took place over the weekend. It was a set 12 meta tournament. Here in America, we don't have Evolution Booster officially released yet, so we are still in set 12. 128 player tournament roughly though, so I think it's still pretty cool to take a look at. It was best of one. Bandai did announce that all the regionals, at least the online regionals going forward, are going to be best of one, but if that's not your thing, there are still some IRL events in the works at the regional level that may not be best of one. Those haven't been announced yet, but I know a lot of places are looking forward to doing some IRL events, so stay tuned for that. But anyways, we'll talk about this tournament today. If you guys are new here, definitely subscribe, hit that bell to miss a video. If you guys want to help support the channel, go down in the description. There are many links there that will help out. Particularly today, if you guys want to compete events just like this, higher caliber regional events, check out the Patreon down below. Check out the articles I post there. You'll be able to see where my head's at competitively, and it'll help get your game up. That being said, let's get started. All right, so for the top 16, again, I did say it was about 128 players from what I was told. So for top 16, very, very diverse. We got 3 Blue Baby, 3 Launch, 2 King Piccolo, 2 Invoker, a Syn Shenron, a Vegex, a Mecha Frieza, a Cell Surge, a Majin Vegeta, and a Dark Broly. Once again, 10 different leaders in the top cut. Very, very cool to see such a diverse meta. Some things a little bit unexpected, a little bit low on the Dark Broly representation. Launch is actually higher than I would have placed it at, but still very, very diverse, very cool stuff to see. Let's start breaking it down deck by deck. Alright, so we have Blue Baby coming in first place here. I will have the first place Blue Baby deck profile here on the channel. If you guys want to check it out, just stay tuned for that in the next couple days. But anyways, Blue Baby, I think this deck is incredibly well positioned in best of one. I mean, I think it's really no secret that it's the best blue deck at the moment. Blue is just such a weird color right now. When you talk about the lacking colors, it's definitely blue, and green to a higher degree is lacking more. But Blue Baby does a somewhat unfair thing that most blue decks can't do, right? A lot of blue decks, they actually have to pay for a lot of their top end cards. Like a Booney, you're actually paying for energy for that. Murichum, you're actually paying for energy for that. Sometimes Big Golden Avenger, you're sometimes paying 5 energy for that. And while that can be a good play, it's not really the equivalent of Dark Broly where you're paying 0 for a 6-drop 30k, right? Like those things just kind of don't equate. But where Blue Baby can kind of cheat that is in the counter window, right? So in your counter window, because of Planet Duffel, you're able to play these cards for 1 less cost. So that's the kind of way that Blue Baby is cheating costs, where other decks are kind of cheating costs aggressively. Blue Baby does it defensively, which is where it kind of makes up for that, right? And then of course you have the Baby Unison with the -5, being able to use Golden Avengers for free when you're going for game with the counter. Of course you can do that type of thing. But again, I think Blue Baby is very well positioned for best of one, because hardcore control decks like this, you actually need certain tools to deal with it, right? Like sometimes you need cards that answer the floodgates. Like if you're in red, for instance, you want to play Broly Crown Retribution or like Omen of Awakening, but you won't necessarily main those cards. And you might main them for a best of one tournament. You might gear your deck for a tournament like this and main them. But are you going to main 1? Are you going to main 2? Are you going to draw it in the time that you need it against the right deck? Those are the kinds of things that come up, right? So I just really think Blue Baby is very, very well positioned for a best of one tournament like this. No surprise to see it win. It's definitely one of the top decks of the meta. And again, even though blue is lacking, Blue Baby is definitely doing a lot of things as far as set 12 is concerned, and it might even be good going into set 13. That's one of the things we'll do today, is talk about some of the implications going into set 13. We haven't seen the whole set yet, but we'll see kind of what we think about it going forward. We've got 3 launch here. Now, I wasn't able to see the deck list, so I do apologize for that ahead of time. I don't really know if these were red, green, pure. I don't know if they were blue, red, green. I don't know if they were blue, red. I just don't have that information for you guys. I am sorry, but I wouldn't be surprised. And it just goes to show that launch is one of the most flexible decks in the meta right now, because all those types of builds have succeeded both in IRL and online tournaments, right? We even saw a red-yellow launch top one of the online events. Pretty crazy stuff. So launch is very, very flexible. If you're one of the more creative players, one of the more flexible players in the game, and you want to play some kind of tricolor deck that, you know, just gives you a lot of answers to a lot of different things in the format, launch is probably going to be the deck for you. And if you played back in like the Hercule days with like Hercule Zeno button during Storm format, I think blue, red, green launch is going to be a deck you're going to very much like. You don't really have Zeno button nowadays. We do have Beerus Super Combo, which is kind of similar. It's very similar in that it gets you that 1 energy open, and that leaves you open for cards like Senzu Bean, other ways to untap your energy. But anyways, launch is so flexible, but it hasn't been doing so well over the past several weeks. This, you know, launch taking 3 spots in the top 16 here, a pretty high number for what we're used to seeing with Launch. You know, Launch is definitely a very, very good deck, but it's not been one of those decks that's like made it to many top 4s or made it to many finals. But here, taking up a lot of slots, very, very cool. Launch is so generic, like it doesn't really play any of its actual core archetype stuff. So I think as the future of the game progresses, Launch could always just be one of those leaders that we look at and say, hey, we have a good amalgamation of blue-red cards or red-green cards, whatever the case is. Let's take another look at Launch. So it's definitely worth messing around with and practicing Launch now, in my opinion, because I think it will be good down the road in the game as well. Then we've got King Piccolo. This deck did win PPG Miami, so a lot of people, I'm sure, were looking at this as the deck to beat. Shout out to my teammate Frank Miller for making 3rd place with this deck at the event. King Piccolo is a really, really strong pick. And again, it's always so funny that this deck was looked at as such a joke. This has to be the underdog deck of, I guess you could say, the format, maybe the last several formats. I can't even remember a deck that was looked at in such a joking manner that was able to just do so much in the meta. Starting at 6 life, no draw power, but the deck's still absolutely insane. Kind of in the same line as Launch. This deck just does so many free things. Like, it's almost like an Arrival-based deck. I kind of think of it as like an Arrival deck, but even in that same vein, you don't lose cards for quote-unquote arriving like you do in normal Arrival decks, right? Like, King Piccolo just puts out such a free board. They actually get to attack with a 40k most of the time. I'm not even sure if these lists were playing the 6-drop King Piccolo, but I think at this point, it's kind of been established that that combo is kind of win more. Like, don't get me wrong, I think Time to Fight plus Tambourine is still really, really good. And then from there, it's not very hard to drop the 6-drop, but I think if you're getting in 2 successful attacks with Tambourine, like, you just throw a Champa on it, you should win the game right then and there, I would say. And by not playing the 6-drop, you're actually less susceptible to things like Trunks Heroic Prospect or Vegeta Unison of Fury, just these cards that limit you from attacking with things bigger than your energy cost. So I kind of think you don't need to play that 6-drop King Piccolo, but again, I don't really know the exact contents of these lists. Let me know in the comments below what you think about that 6-drop King Piccolo, playing it versus not playing it. Then we've got 2 Invoker. Much like Blue Baby, I think Invoker is very, very good in best of 1. But even then, there's a lot of times that Invoker actually relies on their side deck, as where Blue Baby is pretty comfortable with his main deck. And what I mean by that is there are some matchups where you want to bring in Unending Awakening in Invoker. Some Invoker players don't main Cooler Tyrannical Assault, and again, maybe they did for this event, but whether they make that choice to main it or not maining it, if they don't have it, that could really hurt their chances against a lot of aggro decks, right? Like Unending Awakening, Cooler Tyrannical Assault, those are definitely cards you're going to want to have for those really aggressive decks. And the question with Invoker becomes, do you main them? Do you not main them? Even Topo Righteous Aid is definitely a card in that same realm of discussion. Like, do you put these cards in your main deck? And then at this point, if you're putting 8 to 12 cards in your main deck just because you're afraid of some of the matchups you might face because it's best of 1, you don't want to auto lose to aggro, is it worth playing Invoker at that point? So I think that little, conversation there kind of points to the idea that Blue Baby is probably the better control deck for best of 1 because its main deck just covers a bigger spread of matchups. Like Blue Baby with its main deck alone, it can beat aggro decks, it can beat mid-range decks, and it can beat other control decks. Invoker is very well suited to beat other control decks and other mid-range decks, but it doesn't do so well against pure aggro like Reboot Gohan and Red Broly. So if you face those things, if you're not teched out to beat them, it can be a bit more of a struggle as far as I'm concerned with the deck and just my thoughts on it. But anyways, Invoker 2 in top cut. Congrats to those players nonetheless. Still a really solid deck, even though it's several sets old now, which is kind of cool. Then we've got one Syn Shenron. Shout out to Daehan. As far as I'm aware, he was playing much more of like a mid-rangey version of Syn. He wasn't really playing the super control version or the super aggro version. So I was told that he was playing much more mid-range version. But that's really cool thing about Syn right now is, I guess 3 straight sets of support will do this to a deck where you just have like so many interchangeable engines in the deck. Like, many people thought that the 9-drop Syn engine would always be playing the deck. No matter what comes out, you'll always play the 9-drop Syn engine. But we've seen like the hyper aggro versions of Syn, they don't really play the 9-drop all the time. They don't play that engine. Sometimes they just play the Electromancer guy and that whole chain going into Celzino turn 2 or 3 backed up by a cooler. And then you do have the hardcore control engines that want to play 9-drop Syn, that want to play Omega Shenron, and they want to copy things like the barrier blocker and kind of just put up this impenetrable wall. And that's really cool about Syn, is you do have a lot of flexibility in that regard. I don't think when anyone saw the deck in set 10, they thought it would kind of be that way, but it is very cool. There's so many interchangeable engines. Syn is definitely going to be one of those decks that if you're a flexible player, sometimes you want to play control, sometimes you want to play mid-range, sometimes you want to play aggro, you can just buy the entire Syn archetype, and you have a gauntlet of decks at your disposal of just different, play styles, which I think is pretty cool. Vegex only managed to take 1 spot in this top cut, and I think that's just a showed sign of the power level that Vegex is at now. We all know this deck was running the game from set 10 to like mid set 11, right? But this deck is definitely at a much more comfortable power level now. It still does some really dumb things, to be honest. Like, still plays a lot of free guys, has a lot of insane combo power. I think people kind of overlook the combo power that Vegex has. You know, a lot of them are playing 4 copies of Boo's Human Extinction Attack. They've got the Supreme Kais that come into play when they're milled. That's just a lot of free combo power there, on top of obviously super combos. So Vegex can definitely sneak out some wins. If you like that, you know, somewhat traditional old school Dragon Ball aggro style, Vegex is probably still a good deck for you to pick up. And the other thing that's great about Vegex too right now in this meta is that it main decks silver bullet cards like Goku True Fighting Spirit, which directly hurt decks like Invoker and decks like Baby. So if Baby's a really good best of 1 deck, Vegex might actually be a pretty good counter to a deck like that because of your ability to just easily main deck cards like True Fighting Spirit Goku. So one good thing Vegex definitely has going for it. Then we got Mecha Frieza. Man, just thinking about Mecha Frieza in set 13, this deck gets really stupid with that new power of a Super Saiyan card. But regardless, in this format, Mecha still very flexible. Again, I mean, I don't know the exact context of this main deck, but just thinking about what we've seen over the past several weeks, this could have played the Blue Yellow Bojack engine, or it could not have. This could have played the Lord Slug engine, or it may possibly not have. There could have been so many different things different about this Mecha Frieza list. It could have been more aggressive, more control. We just don't know. But Mecha Frieza is going to be one of those decks that, you know, you can really tailor to your playstyle. And I think I've mentioned that a lot over several decks we talked about in this top cut. One of the really cool things you can do in this format is play decks like Mecha, like Launch, and like Syn Shenron that really just mold to your playstyle. You build them the way you're ready to do it. And I've said this for many formats. I think in Dragon Ball Super, you pick a deck that you're comfortable with, you know how to play it in and out. That could actually do you much better than just, you know, picking the quote-unquote best deck of the meta and try to make a run with it. I think if you pick a deck you're very comfortable with, you've built it to the way you like to play. And of course, you still have to include strong cards, right? But we've just seen so many versions of Mecha top that we know that all these different interchangeable engines are quite strong. So definitely something to look at there. Cell Surge, another deck that gets kind of interesting in set 13, and even in Evolution Booster. In Evolution Booster, you can somewhat easily pull off turn 3 Victory Strike, and then when set 13 comes out, there's a potential to pull off turn 2 Victory Strike. I don't think it's a lot consistent. We have been testing it here on the team. I haven't been seeing anything too crazy with it, and it does lose to actually a lot of counterplays and a lot of counters to the strategy itself. But regardless, this was probably a variant of Cell Surge that was playing the Frieza Xeno engine. We've actually seen this version of the deck top several times, especially over webcam events. Shout out to Brandon Abarca, who I think has topped at least 2 webcam events. He won one of them. I do have his deck profile here on the channel from that tournament, which was several months ago. But anyways, that's probably the version of Cell Surge people are going with right now, that Frieza Xeno kind of aggro engine. But once set 13 comes out, definitely be on the lookout for Cell Surge Victory Strike. If your opponent plays Cell Surge or even Shenron Leader against you, their odds are they might be playing the turn 2, turn 3 Victory Strike cheese, but I guess we'll see when that comes out. Majin Vegeta, another okay aggro deck to play in this meta. I think if you're looking at aggro this meta, you probably want to go with Reboot Gohan. That's probably going to be the top tier aggro deck of the meta because so many decks just have a hard time answering it. But of course, in best of 1, you can't play Reboot Gohan. So what else are you looking at if you want to play hardcore aggro? You're probably looking at Majin Vegeta, Red Broly, or Vegex. Majin Vegeta has a lot of cool stuff going for it because it does actually have a somewhat defensive shell, right? Like, you use your Majin Quickening, that gets you the 4-drop Buu Xeno from the Toa Ultimate deck, which can get you a triple striking, essentially Deadly Defender slug that not every deck is going to be able to answer by turn 2, turn 3, right? So while you are putting on that crazy pressure to your opponent, you're also protecting your life with an inherent Deadly Defender that you just played for 0 energy. That's 25k triple strike. So Majin Vegeta definitely has some cool stuff going for it, and this is a deck I think that we can actually keep looking at that will get better as we get more generic green support. So definitely be on the lookout for that. And then finally, guys, 1 Dark Broly. Quite surprising that only 1 took the top placing here. But still, I mean, powerhouse of a deck. I think King Piccolo is pretty well positioned, and even Red in general, I think, is pretty well positioned against Dark Broly. And there was quite a bit of red in this top cut, so that might be one of the reasons why Dark Broly didn't make it so far. Like Invoker, Launch, and King Piccolo, all these decks able to play Violent Rays, and even Blue Baby. Blue Baby can do quite well against Dark Broly, especially if Dark Broly doesn't have main deck techs like Goku True Fighting Spirit and things of that nature. So again, very surprised to only see 1 Dark Broly in top, but still, it's there. It's a really good deck. But now I think, you know, more decks are getting built to kind of counteract Dark Broly and some of the more broken things that it does. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Lots of cool stuff we talked about today. Let me know in the comments below what you think, Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.